Greetings, loyalists, traders, Xenos, Legionists, and other short entities of Warhammer 40K. This is Arndelft. So, quick spoiler alert on this series right here. So, if you're reading the Shira Calpurnia series, you may want to go ahead and stop this if you haven't already read the second book, Legacy, because I just barely started it. And as I was reading through it, mind you, already spoiler alert, so if you don't want one. But I was just reading it, and it got into a segment about slavery. Some women, and for that matter, men, depending on the rogue trader who was in charge and what their tastes were, etc., had basically a harem. And literally, it said that anyone that stepped into that harem, anyone who stepped in there, besides the rogue trader, was immediately property of said trader. And they had a whole charter signed by the emperor himself, etc., that dictated that they had certain rights, etc., etc. And it was in the 32nd millennium, so well after the Horus Heresy, well after the emperor signed their thing, that they added into their personal things that anyone on their ship that boarded the freaking that went into the harem was immediately property of the rogue trader, etc. So it goes into the details and the gruesome whatnot, and how at the death of the rogue trader, all the people are, basically all property of the rogue trader is, and by property I mean personal property to them, not the ship, etc., is then destroyed for all intents and purposes. And that very much includes, in this instance, all the women. They are all injected with something, killed, and then burnt into ashes, injected out to space. And etc., etc. The people who are in the rogue trader, the flotilla, whatever they call themselves, they're used to everyone else in the Imperium being shocked by this behavior, etc. But slavery in and of itself is not uncommon in the Imperium. In fact, it's immensely common. And all kinds of gruesome behavior is seen all throughout the Imperium that the average citizen doesn't really see all that much. But yeah, it's there. Servitors being a huge deal in that. One time in the Ravener series, Ravener touches the mind of a servitor where the person is actually still sentiently aware of what's going on around them. In other words, they're like trapped within their own body, no longer able to control it. That would suck. But yeah, it's very typical and normal for them. And in Legacy, a guy who actually knew one of the women was the one sent down to track her down, because there were two women that escaped. Sorry, I forgot to cover that. Two women escaped, and a guy who knew one of them was sent to track them down, hunt them down, and kill them, and bring their bodies back so that they could be burned and their ashes spread according to tradition, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, reason why I bring this up is people, I mean, at least I get a little curious. How come all these people who are so pious to the Emperor, when they are exposed to chaos, how come, they always fall? I mean, like, always. It's not even a question. I mean, they're gonna fall to chaos. I was thinking about that for a long time, going, these people are just so pious. They are literally zealots. They believe in it just so much. And when you believe in something that passionately, how is it that no matter what, when you get exposed to chaos, you're going to fall to it? And the answer to me is extremely simple. It's because they're already the worst parts of themselves. Chaos only brings out the worst parts of you, and if you can't handle that, if you give in to the worst parts of yourself, you basically give in to chaos. That's all it really is. So these people, when all these people of the Imperium, when they get exposed to chaos, most of them are already the worst parts of themselves, or when they're exposed to the worst parts of themselves, they just fall to it, etc. About 99% of them. But in one book, in the Gaunt's series, Gaunt himself and several key members of his group go behind the lines against to basically hunt down a trader general, and this is all in the description of the book, so I haven't given any spoilers away, but just in case I do, spoiler alert for the Gaunt's Ghost series Traitor General. But they go behind the lines, etc., and it was essentially a suicide mission. They didn't expect to come back alive for all intents and purposes. And further spoiler alert for the book after Traitor General, which name I forget, but they come back. Not only do they come back, but they come back not heretics, not possessed by chaos. They went onto a chaos-held world, were exposed to chaos, and held onto their virtues of the Emperor, which was unheard of. So much so that the Inquisition stepped in to investigate. And furthermore, in the book afterward, diverted to that planet thinking there was some sort of special secret on that planet that would be the key to defeating chaos, because Gaunt's Ghost did resist falling to chaos, and the Inquisition could not fathom that it was just how awesome Gaunt's Ghosts are, that they were able to resist it themselves, because they had already faced the worst parts of themselves, and when they were exposed to that, it was easy for them to resist. Well, maybe not easy, but they did. And an example of how awesome Gaunt himself is within the realms of the Imperium, it's pretty much accepted that everyone has their calling, everybody does what they're supposed to do, etc. If you don't do that, you're either a traitor or a heretic, especially depending on the time frame. But for Gaunt, he was a very special kind of character. When it came to abandoning Tanith, it bothered him deeply. It was just all kinds of... it messed him up inside. And it haunted him for a long time, but he became a rather awesome person because of it. Now, one thing that any Commissaire is allowed to take with them as a typical piece of gear is a whip that at any point they can use on any soldier in the Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarium. They're just allowed to use that as a form of fear and etc. to get them to actually fall in line. And then, of course, there is, if they deem anyone on the field guilty of cowardice, they're allowed to kill them. Gaunt, at one point, stated that if he ever found a Commissaire using a whip in his presence, that they'd regret it. This is a typical tool of the trade, and he straight up said, no, it ain't gonna happen around me at all. This went loads to his character, spoke volumes of him as a person. The fact that something he was likely taught to use when he was being taught to be a Commissaire was something he straight up said, no, that's not going to happen. In other words, resisting something that he'd been taught was okay to do, or if not good to do, and recognizing that it wasn't, and going against it. Gaunt is awesome, and is one of the few characters in all of the Imperium that was ever exposed to chaos that resisted it. The few that can do that aren't Grey Knights, are so few and far between that it's just mind-blowing. So, as I was thinking, yeah, the point of it all is that everyone within the Imperium are either the worst parts of themselves or are so indoctrinated into what they do that when they're exposed to other ideals, especially ones as strong as chaos, etc., that they fall to it. It's no wonder that so many of them do. All you gotta do is expose them to chaos and boom, they're heretics. It's just so appealing to them. And it takes extremely rare characters like Gaunt to resist that. I mean, if Gaunt ever came across slavery or etc., something like that, that he could do something about, you better fragging believe he'd do something about it. And with Gaunt being as awesome as he is, that would be a world of hurts. Like a nuclear freaking launch on your fragging face. Oh, like 3 nuclear launches on your fragging face. But in any case, that is just my 2 cents on the subject. If anybody has any feedback on this, please leave that in the comment section below. I mean, what characters within the Imperium of Man do you think could resist chaos? Yeah, that could resist chaos, that have that capability. I mean, they'd be few and far between, but if anybody knows of anyone, let me know. Comment section below. If you like this video, please give it a huge thumbs up. If you dislike this video, well, maybe the 8-pointed star is good for you. Tattoo it like right here, Yeah, just let everybody know. In any case, don't y'all get into too much trouble or do. It's always up to you. Toodles!